and welcome to Stampscaping 101. We're going to try something with our birch trunks here on vellum. I was just thinking of I don't know, a method that could work really well with these. The one thing about birch trees is we want their trunks to be nice and white, right? And that's always kind of a problem in stamping, unless you're stamping it on something and cutting them out, but who wants to do that, you know, all that work, or coloring in between the trunks, you know, that's what we're always doing, or having to do typically. But there might be a decent solution for this on vellum if it works. This is my first attempt here about what I'm going to try to do with what I'm going to try to do. So let's see how it goes. Okay, now I'm using a Brilliance Black ink on this, okay? The Brilliance is a pigment ink, so it's going to be a little bit thicker than dye-based inks, okay? On the vellum, I don't know, things stamp out kind of soft. So I like to go for the darkest impression that I possibly can. And I just think the pigment ink is a good way to go. And Brilliance inks dry on surfaces that aren't quite as porous as, like, say, a matte cardstock or something like that sort. So that's just my ink of choice. For this type of application. You can see where it just didn't stamp out terribly dark there. Maybe I need to hold this down a little bit longer. Okay, I'm going to go for a second impression here. Let's go a little bit higher up, like something like this. Okay. Okay, now because this isn't a porous surface, if you go kind of wet on something that's not really absorbing or transferring, if you lift it up, it's going to be like a vacuum, so kind of a thicker ink might pull some of that ink off. So I don't know, let's try this. Let's just let that sit here for a moment longer this time. I don't know. Vellum's a new surface to me, so yeah, that worked out better. So just hold it down a little bit longer, and you'll get you know, a kind of a darker print, you know, due to the ink transferring over. Okay, now here's what I want to do. First of all, I have to decide whether I want to heat set that or not. Okay, let me do something before I do that, though. Okay, now we have this space in between the trees here, and I want to add a forest floor down here. Okay, so I'm going to take this grass texture stamp, okay, and I'll go like that, and I'll tell you what, let's use the smaller sedge filler. These two work really well in conjunction with one another. One kind of represents kind of closer textures, you know, due to the different detailing in here, and this one's just more of a general. You can use just this one, the sedge filler. Okay, let's get something like that. I'm not going to stamp it in the background out here. I might later. Okay, but let's just go with that one for right now. I might stamp this one in the back here. I have to think in terms of all these dimensions. Normally I'm working, well, I'm always trying to depict three-dimensional kind of space on my scenes, but now I'm actually working in dimensions with what we're going to attempt here. Okay, so what I'm getting at by that is I'm going to do some coloring on the back of this. All right. And we're going to do that in layers and, I guess, stages. But let's just make sure this is dry here. So I think that's dry. You You can kind of tell a little bit when you dry pigment ink. I don't know if it's with all of them, but they dry kind of lighter in value than what they look like when they're freshly applied. Okay, so here is a bleed-proof white. All right, now this is the first time I've ever tried this. I've never even painted with bleed-proof white. It's always kind of a splatter painting technique with it. Bleed-proof white is an opaque watercolor, white watercolor paint. And I think I need to, let's thin it out with a little bit of water. This paint can go completely dry at times because it is very fast drying, and it dries in the bottle as well. You don't need to put it back into solution all the way down. Okay, you're just using the top portion to just kind of put a little spray in there and stir it up. Get it to the consistency of, like a syrup or something like that. I don't know, it's different consistencies for splatter painting and whatnot. And it is very opaque, so it doesn't have to be too thick to be opaque. With a lot of inks, you have to make them pretty thick, because just in general, even white pigment ink, it's a lot more translucent than opaque. Translucent means you can kind of see through it. Light can get through it, just like vellum. It's translucent. It's not, transparent like, clear glass or something. All right, so let's try this out here. Like I said, this is going to be done in stages and in layers, so just kind of a theory of how this is going to work out. Now, this is really going to be an easy paint job because I'm just going to paint all my birch trees here. Okay, and it's kind of nice because there's no way to do this, right? In stamping, I guess if you have a stamp positioner, you can kind of stamp this out in a light color as just kind of a guide. Or I guess you can stamp it out in black too. And then you can paint them, okay? And then go back in and re-stamp it over the top of this. But the thing is that you're stamping it over paint, so I'm not sure how even an impression you would get by doing so. But I guess it could be done. I'm always trying to think these days in terms of how we can achieve some different looks with opaque applications. Before it wasn't really an option because we didn't have things like acrylic paint pens, which aren't as opaque as I'd like them to be. If they were, then I wouldn't have to, do a couple of these extra steps in here, but we're working with what we have, so let's try it. The white here should be reasonably opaque, though. I can kind of see some of that black through it, though, so man, I don't think I'll have to go through a second layer, but okay, now this is starting to curl here because of this wet media on there. But I think when it dries out, I think it'll kind of go back to flat. I'm not sure. We can also heat set it too. All right, but this is going on pretty well. I haven't done any painting of any sort in quite some time. In this case, it's one of those things I would, when I'm doing ink applications on scenes, I'm generally saying one of the things about kind of working the way I usually do is you don't have to stay within the lines, but in this case, I would stay within the lines here, with these trees here. But it's as easy to do. To get used to this curling of the paper here. Now it's really starting to curl. grass tree. Okay, so this is what we have here. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Do you see that, how that's working? Okay, let's try to take it to the next step, though. We're not done with that. We're going to be adding in some more layers in here. But we got to get this flat. Let's try to heat set it here. Yeah, okay, now see, I just kind of bumped this down. I mean, that's looking pretty flat right there, but let's see. I think it's a little bit wetter down at the base where I started my strokes oftentimes. Alright. It's all rippled, but I'll spray mount this in the end anyway. But look at that. You can kind of see where those birch... no, I'm not doing the night and day type of thing, but you can kind of see, you know, get the idea of what's going on here. Okay, now, here's another thing. So we're thinking of layers here, okay? Now I can put this right here, and this would represent something in front of the birch trees, but I want to go with some trees in back of the birch trees. I want to put stuff in between, you know, these trunks right here. So normally, I mean, if I wanted to stamp this tree in back of there, I would have to mask off these trees, cut masks, stamp it right over the top, and then when I take it off, then you remove the mask, right, and it looks like it's behind there. But I think by doing this, I don't know that if this is going to be super opaque, but let's give it a try here. I tell you what, let's do this one in a dye-based black, okay? So it just you know, it should look lighter. So this tree is going to be in between and in front of some additional birch trees that I'll stamp in here, okay? So you kind of have to think about it that way in terms of layering. It's not that confusing. It's a little bit confusing, though. You know, when you're having to kind of think this way. Oops. What I should have done is I should have masked off some of this base portion of it right down there. Okay, so that's right over that white right there, right? In fact, that looks pretty good stamped over that white. But that's not what I want. This is going to be in back of it. But okay, so see, that's going to be in back there. Now, I screwed up here. I shouldn't have stamped that. I should have stamped it in the background like that. I'll do something with that tree right there. Or actually, let me see if that's still wet. And if I can remove some of that ink. I just put a little bit. Let's see if I can wet this right here. And let's see if we can remove it from the vellum. Remember, I'm not affecting the impression on the front, you know, of that grass texture because it's on the other side of the vellum. Okay, that looks pretty good. All right. Okay, so let's see right here. Okay, now see that tree is showing through my white a little bit, okay? Like that. It's not too bad, though. It does look like it's behind there to me, for the most part. So, I don't know. You can go with a little bit more opacity by putting another layer of white down there, it looks like. But I'm not going to worry about that. I'll do some refinements on the front of it because I can use some white pencil or something like that to make this trunk look like it's indeed in front of, you know, this tree right here. Okay, but let's go with another layer in here, like about like that. But here's what I want to do too. I want to add some foliage in front of the imagery that's going to be stamped representative of something in the background. Okay, it gets a little confusing, but I don't think it's too confusing. Let's see here. Alright, so birch trees. Let's go. Let me pick out some colors. I'm going to bring up some photographs of some birch trees and check out their foliage colors. And then I'll pick out my pen colors accordingly using the 3mm Imoqui pen. Okay, just what I thought. I'm going to go with these colors right here for my foliage, and we'll just kind of intersperse that in there. I'm wondering if I should go with another layer of that white, but let's not. We can always do that in a future video. Let's kind of get the gist of the technique down here and see if it reveals itself of, as far as what we should be doing. Okay, now these are real thick paint pens here. They are acrylic paint pens. I'm really shaking up the paint in here because I want it pretty opaque. Now, I was storing these upright like that, but I've come to start storing these on their side. I just think it's a little bit easier to mix the paints in here that way. Okay, now here's the thing. We're not looking at the front of this scene. We're looking at the back of it. So if I lay down some white yellow foliage in here, okay, and then I put some green over the top of it. Remember, the yellow one is probably the one that we're going to be seeing more than the green, because it's going to be underneath the green in the background, okay? So you have to kind of think of it that way. So let's see how this goes. I might have to put down some of this paint first, and then seal it off with some bleed-proof white. I don't know. Let's see how this goes. Okay. All right. Let me go with this a little bit more of a kind of a, I don't know what color you call this. It's kind of a pale. It's like a warm beige. Okay. All right, now here's my question, and if I put it over some of that white, am I going to see this color through the bleed-proof white? That's maybe, where I was mentioning maybe I should go with more of a thicker coat of the bleed-proof white. But let's see how this goes. Yeah, I think it's looking pretty good right there, So this is what it's going to look like. Okay. I'm just trying to create some kind of little shimmering foliage on the base. We'll build it up here. This doesn't take too long. I mean, this is putting down dots, but this is a big, thick pen, so you can see it's, it's pretty good about building up, our colors here. See right here? I don't know, would that take like a minute? I'm kind of grouping it a little bit, and then what I do is I add on the perimeter, I just kind of do a couple isolated dots. I mean, there's no rhyme or reason. It's just, it's not like you're going to put some foliage somewhere and say, oh my god, I made a mistake, I put that dot, or those 10 dots in the wrong place. It's not like that. Okay, that looks good for right now. I'll show you what we're looking at here in terms of that ink. It looks like that, or it does look like that, but it'll look like this right here when we're displaying. Not with the black though, it'll be white. Oops, don't use black paper. That'll be the inside of my paper or card when I use it. Okay, let's go with the brighter yellow. It's like a canary yellow. You can layer it on top of the other one, put it in between some dots from the other side. And again, for me, see, I'm looking at this. I'm probably approaching it too much from the standpoint of how it looks to me right here, but I should really be thinking about it more in terms of how it's going to look on the other side. But I can also add this on the other side, when it comes around, when I'm ready to. One of the things about using the back and front of, some sort of surface like this, or the ability to be able to do that, is that, you can freely color something if the impression is on the other side of the paper. I mean, you can freely color something without the, the potential of it smearing if the impression's on the other side of the paper. Not that this dye-based ink one on this side is smearing, the leafless limbs. But let's say you didn't heat set the birch trees. I mean, you can color this and paint the backside, while it's still wet or damp. You don't want to do it when it's sopping wet, otherwise it's going to get, it might smear the image. But yeah, you don't need to worry about that at all this way. Okay, all right, that's some green. Let's see how that's looking right here. I think that's looking pretty good like that. Okay, now we have this interior. I was going to stamp another birch tree back there, but that's looking pretty cool if I just put like a deer or something like that in there. Huh. That foliage filled in much better than I thought it would. I think I'm just going to go with that. I tell you what. Okay, so if I'm not going to stamp anything, this is what you do. You just you know, you do these things like this, and then you kind of adjust for what it's telling you. I was going to stamp this other birch tree in the background like this, okay, and layer it like that. I can still do that. Okay, let's do it. Okay, let's do it a little bit of it. I think I could still stamp one coming this way without without interfering too much with you know, some other design, you know, potential compositional potential. Okay, here I'll show you what I mean. Okay, I just colored these two trees right here, and maybe a little bit of this one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp this higher up so it looks like it represents a tree a little bit farther back in the distance. Let's see. Let's do that. So, okay, so I've colored up these three and not this one, okay? This one has a little bit more flare to it. These ones are more vertical, okay? And I'm stamping this higher up like this. Let's come across like this. Just so it's not so evenly balanced, 3 and 3, okay? Okay, I did that. I'm doing this one in the dye-based ink, like that. That's perfect right there. See that? And then it'll look like this. All right. And now look at it. Okay, now look at this right here. See that trunk right here is behind this foliage right there, and I think it does look like it. You know, that acrylic paint there looks like it's in front of it, I think. Over here a little bit, well, oh, that's because that leafless limb is behind there, but okay, so let's do this. Let's go back to our bleed proof white, and now we'll color in these trunks right here, okay? I don't know how the acrylic paint from, if I paint over it with this white, if it's going to sandwich in that the acrylic paint or not. We'll see. You probably don't know what I'm talking about. It gets a little confusing working in these layers like this. Oh yeah, I stamped this tree on this side, so okay, let's heat set this a little bit. Because as I'm dragging my paint brush on here, it's kind of smearing that a little bit. Okay, I think I need a little bit more water in this. Now, if I don't achieve quite as much opacity as my other birch trees, I don't really care about that because these ones are supposed to be kind of farther back in the distance. So let's see if we can get this here pretty decently. Okay. So say I'm just kind of, I'm doing a little bit more of a dry brush application. Well, not, I don't know. I guess at first I was, maybe not now. It doesn't have to be perfect, folks, you know. What I'm doing is I'm just trying to, just in general, I'm just generally trying to stay within, you know, the lines of my birch tree right here. All right, see that right there? That's how that looks. Now let's flip it and see how it's working. I think that worked pretty good there. Let's see how it, yeah, check this out. Okay, so I put down that acrylic paint first, right? and then I stamp that other birch tree over the top of that. So that does look like it's in front of that tree. Same thing with that up there. It's in front of it. And then see how I painted right over that paint pen right in there, right? So it didn't affect that paint in between, the bleed proof white and that. So I don't know, it's working pretty decent so far. It's working better than I thought. I thought it would be, I don't know, these layers could potentially be a lot more transparent. So, not quite as good, but this is looking pretty good so far. I still have to think of my colors that I'll use down here, but let me see. I think I'm going to stamp something in here. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to go look for something. Okay, I think I have a deer that'll look real nice and bold right in here. But, okay, so let's go with something right here. Remember I said that my leafless limb right here is showing right through here? Well, it's starting to show through a little bit more. So let's hit some bleed proof white right on the top side. Okay, so now we're looking at this right side up. Remember all my applications so far on the back side. So let's use a little bit of paint here. I'll remove some of it, or a lot of it. I'm going to do this in a little bit of a dry brushing technique here. So we'll just put a little bit more, and I'll go kind of generally with the what I'm trying to say, the contours of the birch tree. They have these kind of rounded edges like that, or patterns. Sorry, not edges. Okay, so see, I'm just getting rid of that leafless limb showing through that birch like this. Okay. It's doing a little bit of operating right here. Who knows, maybe doing this too, maybe it looks a little bit more dimensional this way too, by having a little bit of this white in front of it. In fact, just to make it match these other trees a little bit, what I'll do is I'll bring some of this into these other ones as well. I'll just put, a couple little blotches. Yeah, it makes it look a little bit whiter that way. Gets the white is showing through the vellum, everywhere else. Let's put this, let's make these ones a little bit more, let's give them a little bit more volume. It's subtle, because these do look pretty white still, even with that white coming through the back. But this isn't too bad. Now this is just some extra work. You don't have to do it here. But one of the things I probably would do, I probably would put 2 layers of this. I would let it dry and then put another layer when I did that initial one. So anything that was stamped in the back, these would be really very opaque. Okay, but this is a little technique right here of doing that on the front and back, that was born out of necessity because, of that, that translucency of it, that background shade was showing through the front, which I didn't want, okay. But I think this looks a little bit, yeah, it's subtle. I think it looks a little bit better. From a dimensional standpoint, 3D. Okay. All right. So see that? Yeah, they're a little bit whiter that way, huh? Well, see, this one I barely used, and it's not as white, so let's put a little bit more on there. Like that. I wish I had this technique when I was teaching out in Maine. All this Well, okay, the paint pens weren't available back then, you know, these acrylic paint pens. All right. Okay, so that is that. Let's heat set that a little bit. The paint, let's throw this on top of here again so you can see all the trees. You can do it night and day type of thing on this too, probably. I don't think I'll do it on this one though, but because I want to do other things for this. Okay, now here's the thing. We have these trees in here now, okay, in the background. All right. So now let's layer some additional foliage in back of that tree, okay? Okay, now I think it's time that we start addressing the base area down here. I have to think about what colors I want to use and how we're going to use them. I can add them in the front, I can add them in the back. Is it going to be colored pencils or what? Dye-based inks. Okay, one of the things that I mentioned in my previous video, or maybe a couple videos, is I like to do kind of a base layer of tone. Okay, and let's go with the dye-based inks. The antique linen is a really fantastic color for this. It's a warm tone, but it's also very light in value. One of the inks that I really enjoyed using while they had them was the Adirondack Lights, previously called Seashells. Okay, they were just they were shadow stamping inks, meaning you stamp something in one color, then you do them in another color slightly off center, and it looks like a shadow. I don't know, people did that for like 5 minutes in the industry, or, you know, the stamping community. But I used it for years as base coat colors because they were so light in value. So they're really fantastic for that. But there's still plenty of colors, and it was by the same company, Ranger. But they discontinued their Adirondacks. Okay, so, but like I said, there's plenty of other colors. Okay, so adding this tone down like this, I am going to leave a little bit of area of light. I'm adding this at the base of these trees, kind of. You can, that looks pretty good. You can come up and do the tree too. A little bit of this tone on that white bark doesn't look bad at all. Doesn't seem to be smearing any of it or anything like that. Okay, yeah, that looks actually pretty good. I'm going to color in some of that bark with a little tinge of this warm tone. Okay. Now let's hit this a little bit from the backside too, okay? I don't know, I think it might make it a little bit darker. Maybe I'll come up and put a little bit of a vignette around this too, okay? Just so it's not so stark white. Okay, let's take a look. I can see a little tinge of color around the, the sides there. It's nothing extreme, by any means. That really looks good back there, that tree in the background like that. See, these ones are done in the Brilliance ink, so they're darker, and that one's done the dye-based ink, so it's lighter. Plus, you know, it's on the back side of the vellum, so it turns out a little bit more translucent. Huh. All right. Well, let's grab some of the peel paint. All right. Let's do the same type of treatment down here. Peel paint, I mean, it's not, you know, anything real extreme in terms of value going really dark, but it's also not very bright either, okay? It's very dull, which it's supposed to be. It's not dull in terms of interest, it's dull in terms of intensity because it's supposed to be aged looking. You know, it's kind of weathered, you know, that weathered green look. Okay, but I'll still leave some of this a little bit open down here. I like to leave a little bit of a lighter area in my scenes, you know, for someone to enter the scene from, but it also represents kind of reflected light. So what we're doing is we're coloring, but when we retain an area of light like that, you're also lighting. So you're not just coloring, you're lighting something as well, okay? And it just, all that means for you as a technique is just don't color everything in. Retain some areas of light. I'm going up here a little bit with that green. Okay, and deciding. Let's hit it with the walnut stain. Okay. I'm just using the same paper towel here. Walnut stain will, well, it's making it look more brown, of course. And I say this is a darker color, so maybe I'll stay in the darker areas a little bit longer, like that, okay, and not take it in quite as far. Go around on the perimeter. This, doing the perimeter darkening creates a bit of a vignette. Okay. Let's do that on the back side, actually. Yeah. It's kind of framed it off a little bit. See, it's kind of a little bit more of interior lighting right in here. All right. Now, I think we could go with some colored pencils in here, okay? I'll just use kind of roughly the, you know, similar colors, maybe darker values of what I just used in here, which are kind of browns and greens like that, okay? You can go with some brighter greens as well, something like this, or, you know, or both, like that. I don't know if I'll use all these, but it's just kind of a suggestion, you know, of what you can do. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to develop my shadow areas of these trees more, okay? So you don't hit it with a, you know, super dark version of this, okay? You just kind of lightly, very lightly, you know, start adding it in here like this. And you say, well, where do you add the shadows? You just kind of, you start it off at like the base of a tree, and then you kind of dissipate it like that. So see, it's darker, right, where it meets up, because it's casting the strongest shadow, okay? Now, if it's in a lighter area, then you don't make your shadows quite as dark, okay? See this right here? So see, I mean, it's just adding a little bit right now, okay? You can always add more, but, you know, something like this, if you don't have to, you don't want to have to do kind of repair work by removing. This is colored pencil, so you can probably take an eraser and erase some of it, but who wants to, you know, kind of bother doing that? Okay, now this is kind of brown tone, but I'm not going to use it like that. I'm going to use it more like this. It's like a 5% version of it. I like to kind of flare my lighting out like that a little bit. So maybe the shadows are going in this direction. Okay. If the lighting is coming from over here, it's going like that. And if the lighting is coming from here, then you just kind of build it up like this. Yeah, and like I said, you kind of dissipate. Okay, on this tree here, you can add a little bit of shading on your birch trees too. On this one right here, I did a lot of that repair work, so I'm just going to kind of go back in here and add some of these little lines back in here. Maybe in black would be better. The eye, you know, the birch, those eyes on there. Like that, you can do that. If you want to kind of add a little bit of shade on one side of the tree, that always be a little bit, could be interesting, like this. See this? If I add it on the left side of these trees, and I do it on the right side of these trees, what you're doing is you're saying that the lighting is coming from here, so it's illuminating, you know, different sides of the tree, or the trees on different sides of the paper differently. Okay. Maybe I add a little bit more shadow at the base of the trunks too. I mean, nothing's kind of happening, you know, kind of in a very drastic way here. I'm just doing it. I'm just developing them very slowly like this. See how light this is right here? I think that could use a little bit of tone like that. See, now doesn't that look a little bit better like that? Doesn't it seem like the tree is kind of anchored into the piece a little bit more like that? Here's this tree back here, but it's kind of lighter back there, so the shadows will be lighter as well. There won't be so much contrast. But see, I'm adding this tone over this tree, but it's really stamped on the other side in this case. See that? Okay. I wonder if I should stamp my deer in here. It can use a kind of a focal point. I think that looks pretty cool as is, but I was thinking maybe... Oh, I don't know. I think I can use a little bit more color in here first. I'm going to stamp my deer in pigment ink. Yeah, even though it is thick pigment ink, maybe I should stamp it in there now. I'm going to add some additional foreground in here as well in the pigment ink, but I don't know, I wanted to add this color at first. Okay, let's go to black. Okay. And we'll also develop those shadows a little bit more. All right. Looking around for my deer. Looks like I'll need to pause the video to go find it. Here it is, but I'm looking for the larger version of this one. Although that one looks pretty good too. That one could be in the distance. I don't know. All right, that is the size right there. That's pretty big. Now it's not going to go that way. It would go this way. But I think that would be okay right there. It's definitely going to make a strong focal point, though. This is the smaller one, but if I stamp that one in there, it would make those trees like immense by in relation, so I don't think I want to do that. Okay, so I tell you what, I also wanted to add a little bit of texture down here, so let's grab our tiny rocks. Okay, and even in grass, I like to add these little elements like this. I just think it just gives it textural variety. I might not add too much because this is grass down here as opposed to like a dirt road or something like that. And also what I'm doing is I'm kind of testing for impression quality over the top of wax. Okay, which the Prismacolors are, so something like that. See that right there? It gives it a little bit more of a base, doesn't it? Okay, so let's grab our deer. Now this deer, I mean, it could have been done earlier, but if I did it earlier, then I would have, in some ways had to work around it a little bit. Okay. We're definitely going with the Brilliance black here. To give it a nice strong impression. And then what we'll do is we'll wipe off the feet a little bit. It is standing in grass, but I don't want his feet to be completely obscured, so I'll just remove a little bit of the ink. So maybe it stamps out a little bit lighter, I don't know. Sometimes I don't remove enough ink and it just stamps out as dark as anything, but... Now, do I want it in front of these trees or in back? If I stamp it lower than that trunk, it'll represent something in front of... Yeah, I'll just go with something like so. Okay, now, I definitely want to get as much of this ink to transfer as possible, so I'm going to hold this down. Remember, getting the ink to transfer doesn't mean like using more pressure on this. It's just, you want firm pressure, but we don't want that ink like squeezing out and from underneath there, which I don't think will happen. The vellum is somewhat porous, so it is soaking in, as opposed to working on something like a foil or something like that. It's very non-porous. All right, so you have that. Our piece definitely took on a different spirit with that in there, though. But that's a pretty good impression there. I have a little bit of some, colors showing through it, but not too bad. And then what we'll do is we'll finish this off with some additional impressions in front of our piece here. Let's go with some additional reeds, okay? So everything's kind of sandwiched. Everything's very layered in here, okay? All right. Same thing when you're doing this. I'm doing it over the wax as well. There wasn't too much colored pencil right back in here, but there was a little bit. Yeah, that didn't really stamp very dark at all. Here, let's kind of do another impression that stay down here a little bit longer. So that makes kind of an argument for maybe stamping this first. But if we stamped it first, the colored pencil would have been over the top of it. So I don't know. I don't know what the solution would be. Or the trade-off, I guess you can say. I can probably spray seal this with a workable fixative and then stamp these black impressions over the top of it. I'm not really sure. Might work. Oh, that's pretty good. Stamping it, these impressions on top of vellum too, they're not super black either. When I stamped these birch trees, they weren't super black, but I don't know, I guess these are black enough. I'd prefer it really black, though, especially for these foreground images. Okay, let's take a look here and see what we have. I still haven't done the finishing touches. We're going to put some additional pen work on here, acrylic paint pen work, and that should really make this scene pop from a dimensional standpoint, because all the foliage is in the background, but right now, but we'll bring some of it forward in front of these trees now, and that's really going to be, for me, really exciting. Okay, let's see here. Okay, I'm going to let this set up and dry a touch, and in here, I'm looking at this area in here, and that could use a little bit of a brighter tone. We need some greens or something like that in here. Now, I can't do it over the top of that, so maybe I can put it in the back of it, on the back side, and same thing like in here, too. All right, but we'll let this set up. All right, I am back. Let's get this finished off here, or further along. I never know. Just how much more I'll be doing something. Let's get this little area in here. It's looking a little anemic down here, don't you think? We need some brighter colors. So let's start off. Let's try to color from the back and add some of this tone in here. Let's add some green. All right. And let's see how this looks. Now, I'm doing this right over that antique linen and walnut stain color. Okay, it warmed it up a touch down there, but it's not getting the impact. So let's go a little bit stronger, okay? Now remember, I'm adding this on the back, so if it's getting kind of intense here, it'll be muted on this side. But yeah, there, see that right there? It has a little bit more of a glow, okay? So you can go a little bit more extreme, or a lot more extreme. Now see this, I can go right over my trees here too, okay? Like this. Let's see if we get a little bit of color in the background. Because remember, this white, it's not going to show that way, okay? But see, I don't know, I want to get a little bit of a little background color in there, I think. Down here, we're missing something, I think. You can hit it from the front, too. Like this. Like, say you wanted a little bit more, I don't know, brighter, warmer. Let's see if this will show up at all. Okay, I don't know if it will. Let's see if that's changed it. Yeah, it's changed it a little bit. But okay, now see, doing it on the back now, the imagery, I'm not adding anything over the impression area right in here, okay? So these are nice and crisp. See, sometimes if you add it over the front, although this is, it's not transparent, you're going to be adding some of this wax over the top of the black imagery. So, you know what I mean? It affects it a little bit. Okay. I think that looks pretty good. It warmed it up in here, huh, with that green. Okay, now let's take a look in some of these other areas. Now, see here? We have our trunks in front of all that foliage, right? Because that foliage is all in the background. It's hard to believe, huh? That all that foliage, the colored dots are all in the back. I don't know. This paper, when it needs to be, when it needs to be translucent, it's pretty translucent, but then it seems like when it needs to be kind of a little bit more clear and transparent, I don't know, it works that way as well, so I don't know. The vellum has good properties. Okay, so we're going back to these. So this is what I was getting at right here. I'm going to be adding, we have that foliage going on in the background right there, but I want some of it in the front of some of this imagery as well, okay? I think it looks okay as is, but it's not as deep as we would want, so but look at that right there. I'm not going to do a night and day type of thing like this, but it'd be kind of cool, though, to do one of these. I do want to do kind of an aspens, or maybe in this case the birch trees at night in one of those night-day, transformational types of pieces. Okay, so let's start off, let's just start off with, let's go with this one right here. Okay, now here's the thing. I went with the brighter colors first when you're doing it on the front, okay? Or whatever colors I want to show up in front of something, I put those on first, and then I put the other colors over the top of it, right? Because the colors over the top of it on the back of the paper are going to look like they're in the back, but now we're doing it on the front, so whatever colors you want, forward, then we're going to put those on last in this case, so you have to kind of change your mindset in terms of the sequencing that you do here. Okay, so anyways, let's start adding some of this in here. So if you have some of this coming in from right in here, see, I'm adding it in this little cluster, so you're saying that that branch is kind of coming from the back and going in front too, okay? Adding some of this over the top of its same color doesn't really do anything, so I'll have to go lighter, okay? But here's something kind of fun here. I did have some of these dots laid down before I did that background birch back there. So it is in front of it, but this looks like it's even more forward now, okay? I'll go in front of the birch trees in some of these areas like this, okay? I'll bring some of this down here, like that. Down, down from the top, kind of hanging down, kind of the canopy of color. See what's going on here? It's kind of, when I put a dot over one of these branches right here, it embeds the branch within the foliage, okay? So like this, I'm kind of breaking up these lines right here by having some of these dots come in over the front, okay? See like that? I'm kind of working with the dullest color too, this one right here. It's light, but it's not very bright, so it's somewhat dull. I think we'll get a lot more character with the other colors. Okay, now let's put a little bit of let's not forget about the carpet down here of grass. Let's put some of these leaves that have fallen onto the the floor down here, the forest floor. All right, let's mix it up here. Let's get with the yellow. This yellow's pretty exciting. It's very bright. It's giving more dimension. It's brighter, but it's also lighter, so it's really standing out, quite a bit. I'll show you what that looks like up here. Okay, I have to remember to bring this piece of paper back with me when I'm showing you these close-ups. You see that dimension right in there? That yellow really standing out. Green on green doesn't really stand up too much, so it's just kind of adding a nice additional textural element down here. Okay. See, I don't know if you can really see it. You can see it close up better, but here, it's a little bit more subtle. Okay, so here's some green on here. Green's darker. I mean, you can put some green dots down here and then go back in and put some white over the top of it, or yellow, whatever, whatever one you want. Add a little bit more green in some areas, maybe. Like, a certain tree isn't turning quite as much or something like that. Adding some in front. Some of the branches. Or trunks. Right. Now, let me see if I can do anything with a white paint pen on the front as far as detailing goes. I just have a white paint pen here. You can use your Artistro ones or whatever. They're probably the same. Well, let's see if there's anything down here that I can kind of, I don't know, make stand out a little bit more. I don't know, maybe I can go with the white, with the larger one too. I'm not sure. But we have the white in the trees here, so it's good to have some other elements of white in here, just to kind of, I don't know, unify those areas a little bit more. Okay, so I'm going to add just some reflective little white shimmering areas down in here. It could represent anything. It could represent little flowers or something like that, but it could just be highlights. Okay, but do you see how I'm kind of grouping it here? See that little white down in here? It just kind of brings the area to life a little bit. And again, we have all this white elements in here, so it's just good to have a second type of area, object, or whatever that has that same characteristic, be it texture, color, whatever. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I don't know, it's just a smaller dot. I'm going to put some of these up in my trees as well. Some of these colored leaves might have some highlights or whatnot, that reflective highlights, even like this red, right here has this, highlight on there like that, okay? Even, blue has a highlight like that. So, you know, kind of little shimmering leaves, it stands to reason, you know, that are out in the light would have that same type of thing going on. So, and again, this is kind of unifying it with the star of the show, which are, you know, these stark white birch trunks, you know, having some other element like that in here. All right, now let me see if I can add, let me see if this does anything. Yeah, that's pretty good. This might be easier than doing this with the paintbrush and the bleed proof white. And this is acrylic paint too, so I'm just kind of going along with the contours of the birch. Contours are kind of wrapping around it like that. And there's these kind of eyes that you can kind of go around and highlight if you want to, you know, to make it look a little bit more dimensional. It's just kind of adding a little bit of extra texture on them. I do have a lot of texture on these birch trees. But you just reiterate it with a little bit of additional shading. And shadow, okay? You can darken up one side and lighten the other side if you want to, or whatever. Okay. Oh, here's some fine-tuning here. Something I didn't notice before. I wasn't thinking. I just stamped this in here, right? But let's add a little bit of a kind of a darker shadow down here. I'm just going very lightly, though, at first, you know, just to anchor the object, the animal, in this case, into the scene a touch more. See that right there? Just right underneath it like that. Hit the shadow with, you know, a color of that, you know, the color of the area that he's standing in. See that like that? See, isn't it anchored into the scene a little bit more now? Like that? All right, now let's go with another layer of not imagery, but kind of texture and light in the form of the brilliance white. This is the final touches, you know, besides, you know, mounting it and everything like that. But let's hit this with some white pigment ink. If I was doing a night and day, I would do this in the background, and I think it would look pretty cool. But since this is going to be mounted on a white piece of paper, all we need to do is use the white here. And let's do this. See this tree in the background right here? Let's push that back a little bit more with a little bit of white pigment ink right over the top of some of it. See that right there? I don't know if you can tell, but it just kind of lightened it up a touch. You know, I can lighten it up more like that, but it kind of pushes it back a little bit more. Okay, like that. See that from a visual standpoint, it just, you know, the lines aren't as strong, so it just kind of makes it look a little bit more, I don't know, frosted, whatever, translucent. Okay, and adding some of this down here. See that? A little bit of mist that's getting layered onto the vellum and onto the forest floor. This is where I think it just looks a little bit more magical that way. Look at that lighting in there. Now see these leaves in the background. Let's put some white over some of that so it looks like they're kind of enveloped in some mist, and then it's lighter too, so they're being somewhat illuminated in that light. So the light is kind of coming from in here, so let's hit these trees in here, or the branches and foliage, and that will differentiate them, you know, somewhat from the rest of them, but they're still related definitely by shape and by color. They're just a lighter value of it. But see that right there? How it's changed it. See, everything was really similar in terms of texture, but then we're adding this in here, and we're making some of those textures and leaves softer looking and lighter. So it's not so monotonous. Not so monotonous from a textural standpoint. Okay. All right, I'm going to put the deer in some mist, and also down here, I think. Now, see, this would be a good if I could do this mist, all that wax pencil, and then stamp these reeds right here, really crisp, and dark ink over the top of them. That would be ideal, but I don't think we're there yet in terms of the media that we have available with us right now. I guess you can maybe emboss on there. I don't know. On vellum, it would really curl up, but I don't know if the spray mounting would solve that. Okay, so look at this with the deer. Isn't that kind of nice, putting that deer in that soft, glowing light like that? I'm going to try something too. I'm going to try something with going back to my white paint pen. You know how we added a darker shadow on this side of the trunks, you know, on the left side of the trunks, on the left side of the scene, and on the right side we added the darker shadows on the right side of the trunks over here because the lighting was coming from in here. I'm going to try to remove some of that outline there of these birch trees. A lot of times I don't include outlines, or I try to vary it at the very minimum. But, you know, on a white objects that are supposed to be white, you need some kind of definition. But what I'm doing here is, or at least what I'll do is I'll make that line seem a little bit more I don't know, hidden, I guess, or varied, I guess you can say. Don't just come down here like that. And just kind of use the contours of the, the tree trunk like that. See that right there? Now see that trunk is just, it's not as distinct on this side as it is on this side. Okay, let's do the same thing on this one right here. See, I'm not doing like a straight line. I'm kind of breaking it up a little bit. You might be able to tell if I put in like a piece of black paper. No, you wouldn't be able to in this case because I have the opaque paint in the back here. Let me just see if I can show you right here. This branch right here. You can highlight it like this a little bit. Okay, so see that tree? Doesn't it look better? See, this is what it looked like before, kind of, it had a stronger outline. So let's get rid of this outline here, or a little bit of it. And plus you can also kind of bring out some of these branches like this with a little bit of lighting on it. Leave some of it. You don't have to eradicate it all, but just kind of getting rid of some of it helps our cause here. And our cause in this case is lighting. But see that right there? Doesn't that look better? Here's the trees on the other side, which are the same ones, right? See, the outlines are just so much more subdued. Okay, so let me flip this around, because I can get at this easier if I flip it around, okay? Just go like this. Come into the leafless limbs a little bit and give them a little bit of a highlight too. Oh, here. The trees that are on the other side of this paper, the background. Birch trees, let's go and kind of get rid of some of those outlines a little bit here. You have to have some outlines in there, because otherwise you won't be able to see the trees, okay? There, that looks better back there, I think. See, I'm getting rid of these ones on the right side. The left side, they're in shadow, so we can have that heavy outline right there. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at this line right here. See, as I kind of go like this, then I kind of scratch and fill in a little bit. Get this one right here. Okay, let's take a look. I think that looks better. Yeah. So they're heavier on the left side, over on the left side of the paper, and they're heavier on the right side, So all those little things like that can reiterate your lighting and just kind of bring things out a little bit more. Now, I lost my crispness of some of these little highlights by putting in that fog and mist over it. So you can go back in there like that. Or some of that fog and mist is over some of these branches. You can go back in and add, some more little your colored dots into it. I'm looking at this now too, and I'm thinking, yeah, I could use a couple more little, those fallen leaves kind of interspersed within some of that white. It's just all layers. All right. All right, so I think that is it. The white pigment ink, it dries a lot more transparent, so sometimes you have to hit it again a little bit more. Maybe I'll spray seal and come back in over the top of it. I do need to spray mount this and get it nice and flat too, so we can add some final touches at that point in time as well. That's looking better, isn't it? A little bit more white, a little bit more opacity. All right. What I'll be mounting this on is a piece of kind of fairly stiff white cardstock. This is a 100-pound weight, and I'll just mount it on like that. Okay, and I'll be using a spray adhesive called Super 77 from 3M. I'll show you that can when I come back in. Okay, this has been spray sealed, and I'm going to take just some blank paper here, my blotter paper here, and I will put this over the top like this. And maybe using another piece of vellum or something like that would be better, but I'm going to brayer this down. I have to work, you don't have to work super fast, but you do want to work reasonably fast, you know, so you can get all that really flattened out. But it doesn't dry super fast. But now this vellum is now on a nice piece of paper. Don't cut a piece of paper to match this exactly. Just, you know, use a full piece of paper or something like that, or enough white, and then we're just going to cut this out. Now, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to spray it with a workable fixative. I thought about the UV resistant clear, but I think the spirit of this one would be better with a matte. I mean, it's not real glossy or anything like that. I just think a matte would be better. Or the workable fixative, it's kind of neutral, so let's go do. Okay, this is the workable fixative I used on here, the Krylon, and this is the 3M Super 77 spray adhesive, purchased at Staples at some point in time. They're pretty common materials. I really don't like, you know, working with a spray adhesive isn't my favorite thing, just because it's, I don't know, it's kind of sloppy. But when I sprayed it with the workable fixative, it started rippling here on me a little bit. So I'm going to try to iron that out. I guess I should have waited for it to dry. I don't know. Let's get that kind of ironed out there. Just with my finger. Okay, let's see. Okay, that didn't affect it. Let me brayer here. The workable fixative, I guess it dried real fast, so I can come in here like this. I don't know why it rippled. Maybe I needed to, well, like I said, maybe I needed to wait for it to dry, or maybe I hit it too much hard with the workable fixative too fast. Yeah, it's a little bit textured there, but that's not too bad. Okay, so this, what we'll do is we'll, don't necessarily need to see this on video, but let me show you just, oh, okay, now this is what I was doing last time. Last time when I was cutting it, my piece out of this, if I'm going to put a little bit of a border on it, I'm just going to leave it on like this, rather than cutting this out and then mounting it again. Let's just have it built into the piece. Okay, so I'm just eyeballing it here, okay? So see that little bit of a white border right there? I'm going to try to keep that consistent. I'm not measuring it, and plus, you know, it'd be really difficult to measure like a, you know, I don't know, something between a 1/8 and a 1/16 of an inch, I would say. Okay. It kind of matches, I don't know, the little white dots maybe. And it certainly matches the, you know, the color of the birch trees. You know, having that white like that. Okay, and then we'll hit it with, if that border isn't perfectly square, to me, I don't really care. Yeah, I want it fairly accurate, sure, but, you know, if I don't get this square or reasonably uniform, then I can always, you know, cut it out and, you know, I can mount it again on white. So, no big deal. Okay. You notice I do several passes here rather than getting it in one. I got a little bit off right there, but so be it. Okay, so that is what that looks like right there. I'll figure out what to mount it on, but that's just an example of kind of it on black. Let me change the exposure of my camera here. Okay, that looks a little bit better. That's a little bit more true to, you know, kind of how this looks right now. We'll figure out some different backgrounds, you know. It could be like a gold. That looks pretty good, huh? This is a Star Dream gold. This is just like a black or dark, super dark blue, almost black. Glossy cardstock. We can use a glossy around that. That looks pretty good. I don't know. The gold might. I think the gold looks pretty good too. Let me see what I have here. Oh. Would this be way too extreme and detract from our piece? Let's see. I think that looks pretty good too. I think this piece can go with just about anything. This is a piece of gold foil right here. I don't know. That doesn't look too bad. Let me see what it would look like from underneath. Okay, so this would be like the opposite of the gold foil, almost. You know, just kind of black. That's not. It needs to be. It needs to have a little bit of pop, huh? I think it'd stand. This the gold looks pretty good, like that. That's the Star Dream again, antique gold. You like something like that, like that from the top. I would get a full piece. This is just, you know, half piece that I've pre-cut to make some things from. Okay, let me go and find something for that. Okay, I've hit this with some more spray mount. I don't think you can see that adhesive on the back. Yeah, a little bit. It's not my favorite thing to work with this type of spray adhesive because it's really kind of messy. I get it all over my fingers and stuff, and you can't do it on a windy day, otherwise it'll, you know, it can get on your pieces and stuff. I mean, it's not hard to work with or anything like that, but if I'm working with a lot of pieces, you know, I prefer like using like photo squares or something like that, but I don't know, nothing works as good as this, I'd have to say. So, you know, you gotta pull it out once in a while. Okay, so this is laid down on here. Hitting this like this again. I mean, this is 100%, you know, surface contact with your, you know, your intended, you know, surface that you're mounting it on. But, okay, now, I just eyeballed this around the edges. Okay, this is roughly, maybe I should measure this one. And it's 3/4 of an inch, okay. So what I do is I go from here, I'll go with a 3/4, I'll add 1/16 there, because the bottom part, you know, and kind of matting, it's a good idea to go with a, you know, additional little distance on the base here, just to kind of bottom weight your piece. And then what I'm doing is I'm matching up my two little indentations here, okay? They're very small, but I'll just match them up like that. And this is a really thick Star Dream cardstock, so I'm making several passes, you know, which is much easier than doing it in one thing that you can, you know, kind of accidentally slip, and then you're going at an angle or something like that. So just do, you know, several just light passes, and it makes the cut really easy to do. As I was looking for some options for my piece here, I was looking at this even went pretty well with purple. It could stand it, you know. That purple goes well with that green in there, that lime green and kind of purple. But I thought it went even, you know, it went even pretty well with red like that, you know. That was around it. I don't know, this piece right here with these different colors, I guess it's because there's a lot of different colors in here. We have the, you know, the oranges, the yellows and the greens in there as potential kind of pairings here. So, oh, let's see if I see anything that stands out to me that we can use a little bit of tweaking at this point in time. Could use a little bit more of a brighter kind of white, maybe. Back in here. Just kind of to make it kind of shimmer a touch. And a little bit of detailing onto some of these branches, making them look a little bit more dimensional, maybe, you know, by putting a little bit of a highlight on them. A lot of times I don't put in this kind of amount of detailing, but I put, you know, there's a lot of layers in here, and I thought it looked pretty good, so, you know, some of these little rocks down here, I could put a little highlight on some of these tiny rocks. A tiny rock stamp. I think I picked up some pigment ink in here. If anytime you get a clog, it's usually if you're kind of going over the top of something and some media has entered your nib there, so just kind of wipe it off really good. And then get it flowing again, unless my pen is dry. This pen might be dry. I use these a lot. If it is, it'll be my second one that I've used up to completion here. Oh, no, it's flowing. I mean, these are just tiny details. I'm kind of putting some on my little grass textures right back in here. This little area down here gets a little kind of, well, I wouldn't say monotonous or something like that, but you get a little bit of sparkle in there, you know, and it just kind of brings a little bit of life to it by putting a little bit of light and texture into it. All right, so let's take a close look at this. I don't want to overdo it. I don't know if it's possible to overdo, especially with the type of scene this is here, but let's take a look at these layers of depth in here, okay? So we have some leaves going in front of these birch trees. We have the birch trees in here, then we have layers of foliage in the back of them, okay, like that. See, this tree is here, and then the white is in here, and then I laid down some foliage, okay? And then we stamped this birch tree over the top of that foliage, but remember it was on the back side, so this tree right here looks like it's in back of these leaves here, okay? So we created a little bit of depth like that. And then over the top of that foliage in the background, in back of these birch trees, done on the back of that, we've added some other paint pen dots right over the front of it. So see, so you have leaves in front, trunks, leaves in back, more trunks in back of those leaves, and then the back of these trunks right here, I've laid, you know, I painted them in, and then I've added some additional leaves in the back of those ones, okay? So, I mean, it's endless. You can just keep doing that, apparently, with that, you know, the Dr. Martens being employed in that way. And these, I'm pleasantly surprised, they were opaque enough, okay, to lay down some in the back there and then lay down some additional images over the top of it, and to not have those images look like they're in front of the sandwiched in acrylic paint. So it worked pretty good that way. And then, okay, so we get all that done. There's I don't know how many layers in there. What is it? 4 or 5 layers of paint. And then what we've done is we've gone in here with some additional white pigment ink, and then that kind of becomes another layer in front of the front layer, okay, of images, okay, images and tone and whatnot. And then, you know, in some cases I put some little dots of white paint in front of, or over the top of this. So it just becomes, it's like this very dense multi-layer. And this is one of those cases here where I can really say that this is truly a multi-layered piece in application and not just the illusion of depth. This has really, we've really kind of gone pretty crazy here. I'm just adding some more white here. When that, like I said, when this white dries, or sometimes when you know, you spray seal things, it's like chalk. It becomes a little bit more kind of on the transparent side. So this is a way to go back in and really bring back a little bit more of that, oh, I don't know, whatever, translucency with the white. Just layer it on here. Now, I'm not going to spray this. I don't really need to with the brilliance. The brilliance dries just fine on here. But let's see, let's make this corridor a little bit lighter here. Okay. So anyways, I mean, this was really fun. It really made me think in terms of the layering. But it's also because I haven't done that before. So I've done it, I've played around with some of these, but not like 5 layers of depth or something like that. Or especially with the bleed-proof white. This has opened up a lot of doors with something like this too. Okay. So I don't know. It's that was pretty fun. It's fun to watch something come together that's working, and you know, especially where you didn't know if it would work or not. Okay, so anyway, there we have it. Golden, oh, I don't know, whatever, golden something. It seems like the word golden should be in there. Birch, golden birch, I don't know, whatever. But see, this area's right in here. Oh, line weight on these trees. All right, that's pretty good. I think, let's see here, let's do that a little bit more here. I think when I spray sealed it, you know, my white paint pen here became a little bit more transparent, so it's going in here a little bit more like that. Okay, so see, you have to do your tweaks sometimes after you spray seal. Okay. Okay, I think that is it. If it isn't, I'm not going to do any more. I don't think here. Going up like that. Okay, yeah, that looks a little bit better. From a dimensional standpoint, get rid of your outlines and whatnot. You want to draw your designs without, you know, using as few lines as possible, but then the lines that you do have, when you end up stamping them out like that, is to really kind of subdue them even more to get that illusion of a three-dimensional imagery and lighting in here. Okay, so anyways, if you stuck around and watched this whole video, I thank you for watching. Thank you always for tuning into the channel, checking it out, and I hope you enjoyed this, the final result of this piece. I really like this piece and the look of it. I think it opens up, I don't know, as always, some new possibilities as far as what we can do with the materials that we have, and I think vellum is a pretty dynamic surface to explore with that transparent, translucent aspect, quality of it, to create additional depth within our pieces. So, Internet's fun stuff to do and to watch develop. And of course, paint pens certainly come in handy. I'm considering getting some 6mm ones of these. These ones are 3mm, which I never thought I would use, but they're pretty fun. 6mm seem pretty extreme, but I think that's the next jump. Okay, so anyways, if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on videos and whatnot, please do so. Leave a comment in the comments section. And thanks again.